Welcome. I'm Clark Benya, and this is your Advocates Corner. Today we have a very special guest. We received so many calls from folks that are trying to find out about workers' compensation. Who better to answer the question than someone that I consider the workers' compensation doctor, Lisa Marie Nero. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Pleasure.
Everyone wants to know about workers' compensation. I'll give you a perfect example. I got injured on the job. I didn't know what I was entitled to, how long I could stay out, what time do I use. Enlighten us.
Absolutely. Workers' compensation is a very complex system, but CMSW is an organization that has tried to simplify it. When you're injured on the job, the first thing you want to do is you want to call your personal physician, you want to get treated, and you want to go back to work. But there's only one problem about that. When you're injured on the job, do you even realize that the first thing you're supposed to do is report it? I do presentations every week to new hires, and we try to get them first thing when they first come on the job, because that's exactly when your benefits begin, when you walk on the job. And a lot of people don't realize that. When you are given your major medical benefits, 90 days at best, workers' compensation starts from the moment you walk on the job.
And when you say from the moment you go through your orientation, like if you work for the city, you go through that orientation period.
Correct.
Is that considered your first day on the job?
Correct.
Okay.
Covered immediately.
Okay.
When you're injured, everybody, again, they want to use their personal physician that they have a personal relationship with. But if that personal physician is not licensed to treat workers' compensation injuries, they cannot get paid for the visit. So it's nothing personal, it's just business.
Right. What do you do? Do you have to are all city doctors covered under workers' compensation? Can they treat, or is there a specific group of doctors that can do that type of work?
The specific workers' compensation, the New York State Workers' Compensation Board, they are responsible for licensing doctors that fall under the category of workers' compensation. So they have to be licensed by the board. And there is a process, and there's an application process that they have to go through in order to become a licensed New York State licensed workers' compensation provider of services. And of course, there are all various designated medicals. So it's medical, it's orthopedics, it's ophthalmologists, it's several services and several medical specialties that fall under workers' compensation that are covered.
Who's covered under workers' compensation? Union employees, at-will employees, everyone?
At-will employees, everyone that falls under New York State Workers' Compensation Board is definitely union employees. Everyone essentially who works that is not filing a 1099, so not independent contractors, police, fire, sanitation, teachers fall under another guideline. So they don't fall under New York State Workers' Compensation. They have line of duty injuries, and they fall different, not under the New York State. But we, in particular, my organization deals specifically with New York State Workers' Compensation injuries.
People come to you, do you seek them? How does it work with your organization?
Sure. When we are called, we have literally saturated the unions with our services as a resource. We go to do presentations, we do free presentations, instructing employees what to do when they're injured on the job, because as you said, no one knows who to call, no one knows what to do. Even the supervisors, they have no idea what to do. When they're reporting the injury, they don't even know what to do. They don't even realize that it is mandatory for them to file what's called a C2 on their end to New York State and to their employer, because Workers' compensation is simply another insurance. It's New York. It's insurance. For example, when I do my teaching, major medical is strictly for your personal injuries. No fault is for your auto accident. Workers' comp is strictly for your work-related injuries. So that's how you clarify.
That's how you. Why do you believe it's so important to know these things? Why do you believe that supervisors, are not aware of how to file these things?
Because it's not a sexy subject.
I hear you. I hear you.
Workers' comp is not sexy. It's complex. It's difficult. The paperwork. Let me simplify it. Workers' comp is simply three things and only three things. It's medical. It's legal. It's paperwork. That's all comp is.
That's all. Does there have to be? Is there an investigatory process in the beginning to say, yes, this is a workers' comp case, or it's not a workers' comp case?
That is what the board is there for, and they're also the ones that regulate that. That's their jurisdiction to determine whether it is a viable case or it's not a viable case. So they can accept a case or deny a case. But more than likely, when an employer, they do have the right to appeal or controvert a claim, which means that they're saying that there's no legal standing for them filing this claim, and that they either believe that it didn't happen or it happened at home or elsewhere other than that on the job.
So the appeal process, though, who carries the protection, or if they have to hire an attorney, who carries that bill? Is it the employer?
The employer, when they have an insurance company. So when they're the major medical, and of course they have their workers' comp insurance, which is separate. So when you are injured on the job, you can hire a workers' compensation attorney. Now, what happens is when your workers' compensation, quote unquote, kicks in, it is supposed to take care of your medical, which is now for life, or has been for life. It's supposed to take care of wage replacement, and it's also supposed to take care of your attorney fees. Now, if you are deemed that you don't have a case, then I tell everybody, if you don't have the medical evidence, which is called prima facie medical evidence, to establish that you've had a workplace injury, then you don't have a case. And then that's when everything falls on, you having to prove that it happened. So you definitely need an attorney to assist. But you also need the workers' comp doctors to help you establish the prima facie medical evidence, because if you don't have a case, then how can you apply for the benefits? You're not eligible for the benefits. So it is a process, and it's lengthy and it's problematic. And we have tried to simplify those problems in the process as an organization.
You're laid up waiting for this process to take place. What do you do in the meantime? What do you suggest that a person that's been injured on the job, what do? They just wait
Besides prayer, yes.
Besides prayer, you just wait.
It's an extreme waiting process, and it's an extended waiting period, unfortunately. In 2007, there was a reform, and even though that was supposed to uncomplicate the system and it improved the monetary benefits, but however, it then placed a cap. So at one point you did have monetary benefits for life that now capped it for between 7 and 10 years. So then, even though, again, many benefits, but that reform, I believe, only complicated the system again.
That reform, when you say reform, it was legislatively?
Absolutely. And the whole 187-page
Wow.
reform, that law literally changed the whole game of workers' comp. And again, we have tried to minimize what the patient goes through by not only teaching, we educate the patient when they're going through this process, because they have so many questions and no one to answer to. We, as an organization, not only do we go out and train the employee, but we also train the union reps. We train the officers, the executives, any union official that wants us to come in and train their staff and their reps. on the process, we do that willingly and for free.
Wow.
A lot of people don't do that, and especially no organizations will send their doctors and their staff into people's place of employment to teach them what to do when they're injured on the job, and we do this on a weekly basis.
Lisa, where were you when I needed you?
I know.
We're going to come back. I've fallen and I can't get up.
Yes.
What do we do? On the other side of the break.
Whoa, stop. That's the spot right there.
Yeah, boys ready.
Let's get this done. Let's do this.
Let's go.
Clip up. You got this.
2 shots to the abdomen. Take him to operating M4. Step. This is how I roll now.
Before the break, I've fallen and I can't get up. We have here Lisa Marie Nero, workers' compensation doctors.
Yes.
What do I do, Lisa? I've fallen and I can't get up. I'm on the job site.
Job site, very, very important. That's the most important part or the piece of workers' compensation. A lot of people misconstrue, getting hurt at home and getting hurt on the job. It's completely different. As I stated before, major medical is for your personal injuries, no fault is for auto accidents, workers' comp is strictly for your work-related injuries. When you're injured on the job, I tell everybody during my presentations, report it, reporting it. Reporting the incident does not mean that you stop work. Reporting the incident does not mean that you're out on comp. Reporting the injury simply states that you are now protecting your rights and benefits for 2 years. Now, if you use your major medical, God forbid you're injured. So, are you familiar with Section 71 of the Civil Service Law?
Negative. That's why you're here. That's why you're here, Lisa. Tell us all about it.
Exactly. Section 71 states that if you are not in your job title, either due to medical or due to workers' compensation, you're terminated.
But even if you're civil service?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
That's civil service, absolutely, the civil service law. Now, what happens is when you are terminated, what goes along with your job? Your benefits. Your benefits do not belong to you. They belong to your employer. So if you're using your major medical and you're out on a workers' comp, what do you do after that 1 year? Your medical benefits through workers' compensation stay with you for life. It does not matter if you leave the job or change jobs. It does not matter if you move. And it definitely does not matter if you retire. Because God forbid, you're still having a problem after you retire. You can come to our organization for what's called a retirement evaluation, and you can determine if your aches and your pains are not because you're grown and sexy, but it's because that you've been doing your job diligently for 20 years or more, and you start to have the aches and pains from repetitive strain injuries. And so we can see if there's your back problems or your carpal tunnel or your golf elbow, your tennis elbow, your trigger knee from driving a bus for 20 years, such as my father did. And again, we're here to do that evaluation all free of charge.
Well, free of charge. Now, you said before, how long after an injury can you be out on workers' comp?
Sure. When you're injured on the job, I have to discuss the whole process
Please
before
do.
just diving into that question. So there's parameters, and there's definitely statutes of limitations. So there's certain employers that said you absolutely positively must report it within 24 hours, same day, 24 hours, and that
You must report the injury.
Right.
Within 24 hours.
Right. That's what employers want you to do.
Okay.
Because then at that point, there's no if and buts about it if it happened on the job or not. There's no way for them to counteract that. Then the law states that you have 30 days to report that injury. We inform everybody and we educate everybody, get that in writing, because if it didn't get it in writing, it didn't happen. So when you report it within 30 days, you now have 2 years to file that claim. So that means you go to your the emergency room. We always tell everybody if you're going to go to the emergency room, or you're going to go to emergency room, urgent care, or your personal physician, if you insist, just make sure you tell them that it's workers' compensation, because the process, you're not issued numbers right away. So everyone wants to know how they're going to get paid. So, and that process alone can take anywhere between 30 and 60 days just to be issued your compensation numbers. Now, unfortunately, those who work for the city and those who are under the law department, they're at a slight disadvantage because those numbers are not issued right away. So when you're sitting there waiting for treatment and you're waiting for testing, you're waiting for medication, you're waiting for the law department to basically issue a number so then you can get treatment. At our organization, we walk you through that process while getting your numbers. So everything within our network, we're covered until we finally work you through the process to get your numbers, to get your testing, to get your medication.
In order to stay on workers' comp, do you have to continuously visit your doctor to make sure that you're still not able to go back?
Absolutely.
And how many times do you have to do that throughout the process?
Sure. At one point, it was anywhere between 60 to 90 days, 30 to 45 days. But with employers and short-term disability that nobody ever thinks about, you must see your doctor every 30 days.
Every 30 days, you must visit your certified
Workers' compensation
doctor.
Correct.
What kind of documentation would you need that you have to continue to be out of work because of your injury?
Actually depends on the agency. There's certain agencies that require a form. There's certain agencies such as corrections, such as transit. They have a particular form that has to be filled out by a licensed workers' compensation provider, and they then have to take that form, they have to then take it back to their job, and then they have to verify that they were at the doctor, and we verify their diagnosis and what they're out for. Now again, being out on comp does not mean that you stop work, and it does not mean that you're out on comp. It just means that you are receiving the medical treatment for an injury sustained at work. You're not using your major medical.
Okay. Is there's certain job sites or jobs that have light duty? Can you be on workers' compensation and go back to work on a light duty basis?
That is correct, but if you check, most job titles do not allow light duty.
Right, especially in law enforcement, there is some light duty, yeah.
Especially law enforcement, we're talking about your social service employees, anyone that has to do any type of, dare I say, hands-on or direct patient care. You're talking about your hospital employees as well. Anyone that has to do any type of lifting, climbing, pulling, pushing, anything that has to do, they will not allow light duty in your job title. So then they either have to rely on the monetary benefits, but if they do have the privilege of doing light duty, again, workers' compensation doesn't mean that you stop work. It just means that you are now covered for life medically. So it's covered.
There's a lot of, while doing some research on this segment here today with you, I've also saw that there's like the walking wounded, folks that respiratory issues.
Correct.
It's not all about a cast or a broken leg. I know it's hard to prove
Right.
correct? How do you deal with those cases?
So glad you asked that.
I did my research.
Yes,
Lisa.
you did. The reason why is because I literally just had two meetings actually with Mount Sinai.
Okay.
And I was meeting with their occupational medicine department, and there's two projects that we are working on. We are working on one particular project is a large transportation agency that their workers were exposed to asbestos.
Well, okay.
Okay, so we are now working with, in particular, the retirees to make sure that they have the proper testing that goes along with trying to determine the occupational disease. And then we are working with another large union with their health and safety department to work on the active employees that also need this testing for occupational disease, and we're working along with Mount Sinai for these two large groups to determine their occupational disease and help them file their claims.
Something I've noticed, Mount Sinai, they also have the registry for the 9/11 folks. They do great work.
They do great work, and we co-manage with there. It's almost we push all of the employees if they're not covered, if they're not registered, we implore them to go to the 911 registry, and we co-manage their care with them. So when they have other unfortunate ailments along with the 911, 9/11 ailments, we co-manage with Mount Sinai.
You cover, you mentioned it, the 9/11 ailments as well.
Correct.
That's a lot of people.
Right, and again, because we're a smaller organization than, of course, Mount Sinai, but again, we co-manage, and especially with the unions that we deal with in particular, we take their cases.
Do you deal with a lot of unions in New York City, New York State?
Several.
So, without mentioning, how many would you say?
Approximately 15 to 20.
Okay.
And with the organizations that we are a part of, we literally take on anyone who is a family member of a worker, of a union member, because it's not only the employee that is affected when they're injured on the job, it's the family.
It's the family.
So when we can educate everyone.
What do you suggest, Lisa? You have an employee that's out, he's waiting for the first check to come in, I guess we can say. What do you suggest that they do in the meantime? Apply for other benefits? Is there anything that they can apply for?
Yes, and a lot of people are not aware that they're eligible at the time for short-term disability. Okay. So there is voluntary short-term disability, and of course there is New York State disability. So a lot of people don't realize that that is a resource. When you try to apply for public assistance, you're making too much while you're on compensation, the monetary benefits, so you're not eligible. But that's not in every case. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. But in most cases, you're making too much while on comp, so you're not eligible. So you have to definitely rely on your short-term disability and your voluntary short-term disability. And there are many companies out there. We just encourage you to research and to see what's not only provided by your job, but whatever voluntary benefits that you're available through your union and also through New York State.
That's very important, and do you do that? Do you educate the folks that there's other resources out there?
You have to. When you're injured on the job, a lot of people don't realize that everything is covered. And again, this is what I teach on a daily basis. Medical is covered, legal is covered. You're also covered for medicine, your testing, and you're also covered for travel reimbursement, which a lot of people are not aware of.
And when you say travel reimbursement, is to and from your clinic appointments?
That's absolutely correct. So it should not cost you any money, no out-of-pocket costs when you're injured on the job. So when you use your major medical, whether it's an HMO or not, there has to be some cost affiliated. Even when you go to the emergency room, there's an emergency room copay. So there's no copays. There's no out-of-pocket costs when you're injured on the job. And That's even covered. Durable medical equipment, everything is covered when you're on comp.
What's key? Documentation? Obviously, keep your receipts.
Now, with the travel reimbursement, believe it or not, according to their form, you don't need receipts, but I always tell everybody, you keep copies of everything.
In a shoebox.
Yes, absolutely.
Throw everything in a shoebox.
Yes, we even give folders to those when they're coming in with their paperwork because it's massive, and we help them organize. And especially when they have to go to independent medical examiners, alleged independent medical examiners. Independent medical examiners are basically employees of the insurance company. How independent can they really be?
Well, Lisa, we've learned so much today, and in the few minutes that we have left,
Yes.
this is your camera. Let the people know what are the most important things that they should know.
When you're injured on the job, as I say, every week, report it, report it, report it. Reporting it does not mean that you're out on comp. Reporting it does not mean that you are have to stop work. You're eligible from the minute you walk on the job. When you reporting it, just make sure you get it in writing, because if you don't get it in writing, it never happened. The caveats of report it within 30 days. New York State says 30 days. You then have 2 years to file your claim. And then what I did not share with you earlier, that after you filed your claim, you now have 18 years to reopen that case. You don't have that with major medical, and you do not have that if you use any other insurance. So again, just report it. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much. You're a blessing.
Thank you so
You're a blessing.
much.
Thank you for taking the time to come here and educate our viewers, and we hope to see you again.
Excellent.
We have all the information on our site. We thank Lisa Maria Nero, Workers' Compensation Doctors, and she's the Executive Vice President. Thank her once again for taking the time to educate us here today. And thank you for taking the time to join us once again. I'm Clark Pena. This is your Advocates Corner, always reminding you, take care of yourself. More importantly, take care of each other. Until next time.